The year 2387 marked humanity's 100th year of peaceful expansion into the galaxy's forgotten corners. On the mining world of New Busan, Administrator Park Ji-won stood before the reinforced windows of his underground office, watching the daily shift change as thousands of miners returned from the surface operations. The colony of 50,000 souls had flourished in ways the original Earth planners never imagined. Their underground cities sprawling through natural cave systems and artificial tunnels that stretched for kilometers beneath the planet's rust-colored surface. To any casual observer, and there had been precious few over the decades, New Busan appeared exactly as intended, a modest mining operation extracting rare minerals from a world nobody else wanted. The surface installations were deliberately humble prefabricated structures that suggested a struggling colony, barely maintaining profitability. The real truth lay beneath, where families had built homes, schools, and entire neighborhoods in the planet's protective embrace. Captain Kim Do-yoon of the Colonial Defense Force reviewed the morning reports in his concealed command center, 3 levels below the official administrative offices. The holographic displays showed defensive positions that would have impressed Earth's finest military strategists. Sensor networks disguised as mining equipment, weapon emplacements hidden in rocky outcroppings, and a fleet of patrol ships that officially didn't exist, their signatures masked by the planet's natural mineral interference. Any word from the outer system monitoring stations? Do-yoon asked his communications officer, Lieutenant Choi Minji. All quiet, sir. The Hegemony Patrol passed through the adjacent system 2 days ago, but they showed no interest in our sector. Minji's fingers danced across her console, pulling up long-range sensor data. Their course suggests they're heading toward the Procyon colonies. The Hegemony, a coalition of 12 alien species that had dominated galactic politics for over 3 centuries, barely acknowledged human existence. Their records classified humanity as a minor spacefaring species of limited technological development, a designation that had served human interests perfectly. While the aliens squabbled over prime real estate and lucrative trade routes, humanity quietly established footholds in the galaxy's neglected regions. Park Ji-won had been among the original colonists who left Earth's increasingly crowded system. Like many of his generation, he was the son of military veterans who sought freedom from the bureaucratic maze that Earth had become. The outer colonies attracted engineers, soldiers, farmers, and pioneers, people who wanted to build something new rather than manage something old. In the Hegemony's grand halls of power on the capital world of Nexus Prime, High Counselor Thekvan reviewed intelligence reports with the same casual disinterest he might show a grocery list. The quarterly briefing on minor species activities mentioned several human settlements, noting their apparent focus on resource extraction and their lack of meaningful military presence. These mammals multiply quickly, observed his aide sub-commander, Feltar. Our projections suggest they may have established colonies in 47 systems. Irrelevant, Thekvan replied, his forearms dismissing the holographic display with an elegant gesture. They occupy worlds we have no use for and pose no threat to civilized space. Let them scratch at rocks and ice. When they become numerous, enough to matter, they'll seek membership in the Hegemony like all the others. The Hegemony's intelligence services operated under assumptions that had served them well for centuries. Lesser species followed predictable patterns: initial expansion, resource depletion, internal conflicts, and eventual submission to Hegemony protection. The model had worked for dozens of species, and there was no reason to believe these humans would prove different. On New Busan, Dr. Lee Soo-hyun completed her daily inspection of the colony's manufacturing facilities. Officially, the massive underground complexes produced mining equipment and spare parts for the surface operations. The reality was far more complex. Automated factories capable of producing everything from advanced computing systems to military-grade spacecraft components. The colony's maintenance bay could service ships 3 times larger than anything in their official fleet registry. Young Han Woo-jin, barely 18 and fresh from the Colonial Academy, reported for his first assignment with the Engineering Corps. Like all colonial children, he had grown up knowing the truth about humanity's presence in the galaxy, that they were neither as weak nor as isolated as they appeared. The academy had taught him history, tactics, advanced mathematics, and the fundamental principle that had guided human expansion. Prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. The hegemony believes we're primitives, explained his instructor, Colonel Yoon Hyerin. They see our surface installations and assume that's all we are. This misconception has given us a century to build, to learn, and to prepare. But preparation means nothing if we're not ready to act when the time comes. As the twin suns of New Busan set behind the planet's mineral-rich mountains, casting long shadows across the modest surface structures, the colony's true nature remained hidden beneath tons of rock and steel. Communication arrays disguised as atmospheric processors maintained contact with dozens of other human settlements. Deep beneath the planet's crust, fusion reactors provided power that could support a population 10 times larger than New Busan's official census. The hegemony's patrol ships continued their scheduled routes through the sector, their sensors detecting nothing more than the expected signatures of a small mining operation. Their crews, composed of species that had never known true conflict, saw only what they expected to see. In their long history of galactic dominance, they had never encountered a species patient enough to spend a century preparing for a war that might never come. But in the quiet depths of New Busan and 100 worlds like it, humanity waited, watched, and prepared for the day when their masquerade would end. Captain Rexani of the Hegemony Third Fleet considered the assignment beneath his station. A routine compliance inspection of the Outer Rim colonies was work for junior officers, not a commander of his experience. Yet here he was, leading 6 heavily armed vessels toward a cluster of systems that barely registered on hegemony charts, all because some bureaucrat on Nexus Prime had decided to investigate reports of irregular activity in human space. The briefing materials painted a picture of typical minor species development, scattered settlements focused on resource extraction, minimal defensive capabilities, and no significant technological advancement. Rexani had overseen dozens of such inspections over his career. The pattern was always the same. Initial posturing followed by rapid capitulation once the locals realized the futility of resisting hegemony authority. Approaching the first system now, Captain, reported his navigation officer. 3 planets, showing signs of colonization, consistent with intelligence reports. Rexani studied the tactical display showing New Busan and its sister colonies. The sensor readings confirmed what he expected. Modest surface installations, minimal energy, signatures, and no detectable military presence. Standard intimidation protocol, he ordered. Close to weapons range, but don't fire unless they show hostile intent. Let's remind these mammals of their place in the galactic order. On New Busan, Admiral Park Ji-won, whose real rank had been carefully concealed for decades, watched the approaching hegemony ships with calm professionalism. The colony's hidden sensor networks had detected the alien vessels hours before they entered the system, providing time to implement contingency plans that had been rehearsed countless times, but never used. They're following hegemony standard operating procedure, reported Commander Kim Do-yoon from the Concealed Tactical Center. 6 ships in intimidation formation, energy weapons powered but not targeted, classic first contact posturing. And our response? Asked Colonel Yoon Hyerin, her hand resting casually near the activation controls for the colony's defense grid. We follow our own protocols, Park replied. Give them exactly what they expect to see until they force our hand. The initial communication from Captain Rexani was predictably arrogant. He demanded immediate compliance with hegemony regulations, payment of protection fees, and acknowledgement of hegemony sovereignty over human space. The terms were deliberately humiliating, designed to break the spirit of resistance before it could form. Administrator Kim Min-seok, playing his role as the colony's civilian leader, responded with polite but firm refusal. We appreciate the hegemony's interest in our welfare, he transmitted, but we are citizens of the Human Colonial Alliance and recognize no other authority. Rexani's reaction was swift and predictable. Your so-called alliance means nothing here. You will comply with hegemony directives or face the consequences of your defiance. And what consequences would those be? Min-seok asked, his tone remaining diplomatically neutral. destruction of your orbital installations as a demonstration of hegemony power. You have 1 hour to reconsider your position. The hour passed with careful preparation on both sides. Rexani positioned his ships for maximum psychological impact, their weapons arrays clearly visible to any observer on the planet's surface. He had used this tactic dozens of times. The sight of hegemony firepower usually convinced even the most stubborn species to negotiate. What he didn't see were the defensive platforms emerging from concealment throughout the asteroid belt surrounding New Busan. Powered down and coated with sensor-absorbing materials, they had appeared to be nothing more than space debris. Now they revealed their true nature as sophisticated weapons platforms, each capable of engaging multiple targets simultaneously. The attack, when it came, was devastating in its precision. Rexani ordered his ships to destroy New Busan's orbital mining stations, expecting the display of superior firepower to end all resistance. Instead, he watched in horror as concealed defensive systems revealed themselves throughout the system. Energy beams that had been dismissed as mining lasers suddenly displayed military-grade focusing capabilities, slicing through hegemony shields with terrifying efficiency. Kinetic projectiles launched from hidden railguns struck with the force of small asteroids, punching through armor that had been considered impenetrable. Lieutenant Choi Minji coordinated the defensive response from her position in the underground command center. Primary targets engaged. Enemy ships Alpha and Beta showing critical damage. Charlie and Delta are attempting to withdraw. Maintain fire until they're outside our defensive perimeter, ordered Admiral Park. But don't pursue. We want survivors. To report what they've seen, the battle lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, 4 of Rexani's 6 ships were either destroyed or crippled beyond repair. The captain himself survived only because his flagship's emergency systems activated faster than his tactical officer could override them, carrying him away from the engagement zone in an automated escape pod. As Rexani's damaged vessel limped toward hegemony space, emergency broadcasts filled the communication channels. What the hegemony had assumed was an isolated mining colony was revealing itself as part of a vast network of human settlements, each one apparently equipped with sophisticated defensive systems. Dr. Lee Soo-yeon supervised the damage assessment teams as they inspected New Busan's orbital facilities. Minimal structural damage, she reported. The hegemony weapons were designed for intimidation rather than destruction. Our defensive grid performed exactly as designed. Young Han Woo-jin, now baptized by his first combat experience, helped coordinate rescue operations for the handful of hegemony survivors. "Why are we saving them?" he asked Colonel Yoon. "Because," she replied, "survivors tell stories, and the story they'll tell is that they awakened something they should have left sleeping." As the twin suns of New Busan rose over installations that no longer needed to hide their true purpose, humanity's century of patient preparation entered its next phase. The masquerade was over. Within hours of Captain Rexani's desperate transmission, quantum communication networks that the hegemony had never detected came alive across human space. From the industrial complexes of New Gyeongju to the research stations orbiting distant stars, humanity's hidden infrastructure revealed itself in a coordinated awakening that spanned 47 star systems. Admiral Kim Tae-hyung stood before the assembled Colonial Defense Council in the war room, buried deep beneath New Seoul's surface. The chamber, carved from solid bedrock and shielded against all forms of detection, had waited a century for this moment. Representatives from every human colony appeared via holographic projection, their faces bearing the same mixture of anticipation and grim determination. "The situation is clear," Tae-hyung began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "The hegemony has committed an act of unprovoked aggression against human civilians. Rexani's attack on New Busan constitutes a declaration of war against the Human Colonial Alliance." Governor Bae Jisoo of the Kepler colonies leaned forward in her chair. "Our intelligence networks report massive mobilization throughout hegemony space. They're treating this as a localized rebellion rather than recognizing the scope of what they've awakened." "Their mistake," replied General Park Sung-min from his command post on New Daegu. "Our deep cover assets in hegemony territory confirm that their leadership still believes they're dealing with primitive colonists. High Counselor Thekvan has authorized a punitive expedition of 60 ships to eliminate what they're calling the human infestation. Dr. Cho Yujin, director of Colonial Intelligence, activated a three-dimensional map showing the entire human sphere of influence. What appeared to be scattered mining operations and research stations transformed before their eyes into a sophisticated military network. Operation Sunrise is now active, she announced. All camouflage protocols have been suspended. Our true capabilities are being revealed across the board. The transformation was remarkable. On New Incheon, massive manufacturing complexes emerged from underground caverns, their production lines shifting from civilian goods to military hardware. The colony's university revealed itself as the Human Naval Academy, its students actually officer candidates who had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. Captain Jung Hana supervised the activation of New Ulsan's shipyards, facilities that had masqueraded as cargo processing centers for decades. First squadron of Patriot-class destroyers rolling out now, she reported to the Colonial Defense Command. Estimated time to full operational capability, 18 hours. The Patriot-class vessels represented the pinnacle of human military engineering, incorporating lessons learned from a century of observing hegemony technology. While alien ships relied on energy shields and beam weapons, human designs emphasized adaptive armor, missile swarms, and kinetic weapons that could punch through any known defensive system. Meanwhile, on the hegemony capital world of Nexus Prime, High Counselor Thekvan reviewed the reports from Rexani's ill-fated expedition with growing irritation. The captain's claims of sophisticated human defenses and hidden military installations seemed absurd, clearly exaggerated to cover his own incompetence. 60 ships should be more than sufficient to resolve this matter, Thekvan declared to his assembled council. Fleet Admiral Zoriketh will lead the expedition personally. These humans will learn the price of defying hegemony authority. Sub-Commander Veltar dared to raise a concern. High Counselor, perhaps we should consider the possibility that our intelligence estimates were incorrect. Rexani's reports suggest Rexani is a disgraced failure seeking to avoid responsibility for his defeat, Thekvan interrupted. No minor species has ever possessed the capability to threaten a hegemony fleet. This is a localized uprising that will be crushed within days. The hegemony's intelligence services, hampered by centuries of success against technologically inferior opponents, failed to recognize the signs of what they faced. Their analysis continued to classify human settlements as primitive extraction operations, even as those same settlements openly displayed fusion reactors, orbital defense platforms, and manufacturing capabilities that rivaled hegemony standards. On New Gwangju, 16-year-old Lee Ji-hoon watched through his classroom windows as the colony's true nature revealed itself. The modest surface buildings had been facades. Now massive structures rose from concealed positions, their surfaces gleaming with advanced materials that had been disguised as simple concrete and steel. Your parents' generation spent their entire lives preparing for this moment, his teacher, Professor Nam Hyojin, explained to the assembled students. They sacrificed the comfort of revealing their achievements so that you could inherit a future worth fighting for. The professor's words carried special weight. He had been among the original colonists who established New Gwangju 40 years earlier. Like many of his generation, he had been a decorated soldier on Earth before choosing the uncertain life of a frontier settler. As human space openly mobilized for war, the true scope of their preparation became clear. The Colonial Defense Force possessed over 300 combat vessels, from fast attack craft to heavy battleships that had been constructed in secret shipyards throughout the Outer Rim. Planetary defense networks that had masqueraded as mining equipment revealed themselves as sophisticated weapon systems capable of engaging multiple targets simultaneously. Most importantly, humanity had spent decades studying their potential enemies. Every hegemony ship design, every tactical doctrine, every technological advantage had been analyzed and countered. While the aliens had grown complacent in their dominance, humanity had been preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Admiral Kim Tae-hyung concluded the emergency session with words that would echo throughout human space. For 100, Years we have hidden our strength, hoping that peace would prevail. The hegemony has chosen to end that peace. Now they will learn what humanity is truly capable of when our families are threatened. As the council session ended and the holographic projections faded, a new reality settled over human space. The century of hiding was over. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you awakened a sleeping giant. Fleet Admiral Zorketh of the Hegemony Navy approached the new Busan system with 60 of the finest ships in the alien fleet, confident that this punitive expedition would end the human problem once and for all. His intelligence briefings had assured him that he faced nothing more than desperate colonists with improvised defenses, easily overwhelmed by superior hegemony technology and firepower. The reality that greeted him shattered every assumption about human capabilities. As his fleet entered the system's outer reaches, sensor readings revealed not scattered mining operations, but a fully militarized defensive network. Orbital platforms that had appeared to be processing stations unveiled themselves as fortress installations bristling with weapons. The asteroid belt itself seemed to come alive as concealed vessels emerged from hiding positions they had occupied for decades. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported with barely concealed alarm, "we're detecting over 40 discrete military targets. These readings suggest ship classifications that match or exceed our own heavy cruiser standards." Zorketh studied the tactical display with growing unease. The human formations were unlike anything in hegemony military doctrine, loose adaptive arrangements that seemed to flow like living organisms rather than maintain rigid battle lines. Maintain course. These primitives may have acquired some advanced technology, but they lack the tactical experience to use it effectively. Commander Bayek Jaehyun watched the approaching hegemony fleet from his position aboard the human flagship, Indomitable, a vessel that had officially never existed. Unlike the aliens' decorative approach to ship design, human vessels were built for war, angular, heavily armored craft that sacrificed aesthetics for survivability and firepower. Their formation suggests standard hegemony doctrine, reported his tactical officer Lieutenant Park Yeonsu. Concentrated firepower in rigid battle lines, emphasis on energy weapons and shield penetration. Then they're about to receive an education in human naval warfare, Jaehyun replied. Signal all units, execute Operation Sledgehammer. The battle began with Zorketh's confident advance toward the primary human defensive positions. Hegemony ships opened fire at maximum range, their energy weapons lancing out in spectacular displays of raw power. The alien admiral expected to see human shields collapse under the assault, followed by the inevitable surrender of outmatched colonists. Instead, he witnessed something that challenged every principle of space combat he had learned over 3 decades of service. Human ships didn't rely on energy shields. They used adaptive armor that absorbed and dispersed incoming fire while maintaining full maneuverability. Their response was equally shocking. Swarms of kinetic missiles that bypassed hegemony shields entirely, striking hull armor with the force of guided asteroids. Captain Lee Yun-seo led her squadron of Raptor-class destroyers in a high-speed flanking maneuver that caught the hegemony formation completely unprepared. While alien ships maneuvered like massive space fortresses, human vessels moved like fighters, using their superior acceleration to achieve tactical positions that should have been impossible for ships of their size. Multiple impacts on enemy flagship, reported her weapons officer. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons, not kinetic penetrators. The concept of ramming attacks horrified the hegemony crews, who had never encountered an enemy willing to sacrifice individual ships for tactical advantage. When the human destroyer Defiant crashed through the alien battle line, her captain had already evacuated his crew to escape pods while her automated systems drove the vessel into the heart of the enemy formation. Admiral Zorketh watched in disbelief as his carefully planned battle deteriorated into chaos. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts, their stealth technology rendering them invisible until they struck. Their weapons seemed designed specifically to counter hegemony defenses, punching through shields and armor that had protected alien vessels for centuries. "Sir, we've lost 18 ships," his aide reported. "The humans are using tactics we've never encountered. Their formations are adaptive, their weapons unconventional, and their willingness to accept casualties is beyond our combat models. The Admiral's pride warred with tactical reality. His fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that wasn't supposed to exist. Signal General retreat. We'll regroup and... His words were cut off as a human battleship materialized from stealth directly beside his flagship. The massive vessel, twice the size of anything in the intelligence reports, opened fire at point-blank range with weapons that the hegemony had never seen before. Particle beams that ignored shields and carved through the alien ship's hull like a blade through cloth. Colonel Song Minho coordinated the ground-based portions of the defense from New Busan's command center. While the space battle raged overhead, his teams prepared for the possibility of enemy landing forces. The preparations proved unnecessary. The hegemony fleet was in full retreat, leaving behind wreckage and escape pods scattered throughout the system. Casualty report, ordered Admiral Park Ji-won as the immediate threat passed. 7 ships damaged, 2 destroyed, came the reply. Total human casualties 43 dead, 91 wounded. Enemy casualties estimated 15,000. The numbers reflected the reality of human military doctrine, careful preparation, superior technology, and tactical flexibility that turned numerical disadvantage into overwhelming victory. Every human ship had been designed to fight outnumbered. Every crew had trained for scenarios exactly like this engagement. As Admiral Zorketh's surviving ships limped back toward hegemony space, their emergency transmissions painted a picture that the alien leadership would find impossible to believe. The humans weren't primitives. They were a military power that had been hiding in plain sight for over a century, preparing for exactly this moment. Young Han Woo-jin, now a veteran of 2 battles despite his age, helped coordinate rescue operations for both human and alien survivors. "Why did they underestimate us so badly?" he asked his commanding officer. Captain Kim Do-hyun considered the question as he watched hegemony escape pods being collected by human rescue vessels. Because they've never faced an enemy that had the patience to prepare. They conquered the galaxy through superior technology and numbers, never imagining that someone might spend a century learning their weaknesses. The implications of the human victory rippled throughout both human and hegemony space. For humanity, it marked the end of a century of concealment and the beginning of open participation in galactic affairs. For the hegemony, it represented the first serious military defeat in their recorded history. As the debris of the alien fleet drifted through space around New Busan, the balance of power in the galaxy had fundamentally shifted. The sleeping giant was fully awake. 6 months after the Battle of New Busan, the galaxy bore little resemblance to the orderly hegemony-dominated space that had existed for 3 centuries. Human fleets, no longer bound by the need for concealment, had swept through dozens of star systems, not as conquerors seeking territory, but as liberators dismantling an oppressive system that had kept hundreds of species in subjugation. Admiral Kim Tae-hyung stood before the newly reformed Galactic Council, an assembly that now included representatives from 47 previously minor species that had found their voice after humanity's military intervention. The Grand Chamber on Nexus Prime, once the exclusive domain of hegemony leadership, now hosted a diversity of beings who had never before been permitted to speak as equals. The Human Colonial Alliance seeks no dominion over other species, Tae-hyung addressed the assembled delegates. Our actions over the past months have been guided by a single principle: the right of all sentient beings to determine their own destiny, free from coercion or subjugation. High Counselor Thekvan, once the undisputed ruler of half the galaxy, sat in chains as he awaited trial for crimes against multiple species. His downfall had been swift and decisive once humanity's true capabilities became known. The hegemony's military structure, built around intimidation and technological superiority, had crumbled when confronted by an enemy that surpassed them in both areas. Captain Rexani, the officer whose initial attack had triggered the war, now served as a witness for the prosecution. His testimony revealed the casual brutality with which the hegemony had treated lesser species, the systematic exploitation that had funded their civilization's prosperity. "They called us primitives," Rexani told the court. his once proud bearing broken by the weight of his experiences. We believed ourselves superior because we had never been challenged. The humans showed us what true superiority looked like, not in weapons or technology, but in patience, preparation, and the wisdom to know when violence was necessary. On New Seoul, President Choi Min-jung addressed the Colonial Assembly, her words broadcast across human space to an audience that had grown from scattered colonists to a unified civilization of over 200 million souls. Today marks the official end of our century of concealment. Human space is no longer hidden in the galaxy's forgotten corners. We take our place among the stars as equals, not as subjects. The transformation of human space was remarkable to witness. Cities that had hidden underground for generations now rose proudly into alien skies. The industrial complexes of New Ulsan operated at full capacity, their production lines turning out not weapons of war, but the infrastructure of peace, hospitals, schools, and research facilities that would benefit all species. Dr. Cho Yoo-jin oversaw the integration of liberated hegemony territories into the new galactic order. Her intelligence networks, once focused on gathering information about potential enemies, now coordinated humanitarian efforts across dozens of worlds. The challenge isn't military anymore, she explained to her staff. It's helping civilizations learn to govern themselves after centuries of subjugation. The process wasn't without difficulties. Some species, so accustomed to hegemony rule that they feared independence, required careful guidance to establish their own governmental structures. Others, driven by centuries of resentment, sought revenge against their former oppressors rather than justice. Captain Jung Hana, now promoted to admiral and commanding the human peacekeeping fleet, found herself mediating disputes between species that had been enemies for generations. Freedom is more complex than war, she observed to her staff. Anyone can destroy. It takes wisdom to build something better. The technological exchange between humanity and other species proved mutually beneficial. Human innovations in stealth, technology, kinetic weapons, and adaptive materials complemented alien advances in energy manipulation, biological sciences, and exotic matter research. Within months, collaborative research stations were producing breakthroughs that neither side could have achieved alone. Young Han Woo-jin, now a lieutenant colonel despite his youth, led one of the integration teams working with formerly subjugated species. On the world of Kepler 438b, he helped establish the first multi-species colony, where beings who had never been permitted to interact as equals learned to work together. My grandfather fought in the Earth Wars. He told a mixed gathering of human and alien children. He used to say that the best victory is the one that makes war unnecessary for the next generation. That's what we're building here, a future where your children won't need to fight the battles we fought. The trial of hegemony leadership became a symbol of the new galactic order. Rather than summary execution or harsh imprisonment, the proceedings emphasized truth, reconciliation, and the establishment of principles that would prevent future atrocities. Human legal scholars worked alongside alien jurists to create a framework for interspecies justice. Professor Nam Hyojin, now serving as Director of Colonial Education, oversaw the establishment of integrated academies throughout human space. We must never forget the lesson of the past century, he told his students. Strength without wisdom leads to tyranny. Wisdom without strength leads to subjugation. Only by combining both can we build a future worthy of our sacrifices. On New Busan, where the war had begun, a memorial stood where the first hegemony ships had fallen. The monument honored not just human casualties but all those who had died in the conflict, including the alien crews who had followed orders without understanding the consequences of their actions. Administrator Park Ji-won, now governor of the New Busan system, often visited the memorial at sunset. The planet's twin suns cast long shadows across installations that no longer needed to hide their purpose, their gleaming surfaces reflecting a galaxy transformed by humanity's patience and preparation. As he stood before the memorial, Park reflected on the path that had brought them to this moment. A century of hiding, decades of preparation, and months of war had culminated in something unprecedented in galactic history. Not the dominance of one species over others, but the emergence of a truly cooperative interstellar civilization. The galaxy had learned that some sleeping giants, when finally awakened, chose not to destroy but to build. Humanity's greatest victory wasn't in the battles they had won, but in the peace they had made possible for countless worlds and species that had never known freedom. The age of the hegemony was over. The age of cooperation had begun.